This is the story of Chubbies. Oh, and the name Chubbies, well, we'll get there. The year is 2010. The place, San Francisco. Four friends are about to make history. It was the 4th of July on Lake Tahoe, and our founders were called to start a company. One that was fun. One that didn't take life so seriously. Looking back on old photographs of their dads, they found themselves asking one simple question. Why aren't shorts short anymore? Back in their day, mustaches were robust, shorts were short, and the smiles were big. So they set out to answer that question.
Hello, hello. I don't know about you, but that got me a little bit excited. Hi, everyone. My name is Preston Rutherford. I'm a co-founder of Chubbies, and now Marathon Engine and Marathon Data. Today, my goal is to address the main myths and misconceptions about brand, so everyone in this room can not only invest in it, but do it with confidence. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the last 15 years, founding and growing modern consumer brands, it's that a balanced mix of brand and performance drives better performance, measured in profit dollars, than performance alone. So, how's Chubbies doing today? 15 years after its founding, Chubbies is crushing it. 9 figures in revenue, successfully expanding multi-channel, going on 8 straight years of top and bottom line growth, and growing EBITDA 40% year over year, which, as you know, is not the common story right now. But it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. Along the way, we almost went out of business. As I've seen with my own brand, and after having seen countless brands go through this over the last 15 years, there's a brand lifecycle. And it generally has these 4 stages. Stage 1, the good old days. Everything is easy, everything works, and you can't seem to stay in stock. It's the honeymoon phase. Then, stage 2, start to become a real company with goals, forecasts, investors, and we need to scale systematically. We pick our North Star metrics, often revenue and ROAS, and generally, when we drive ROAS up, revenue goes up too. But then, something changes. We don't immediately sell out of everything right away, and we get the first taste of missing our numbers. We run the first discount, but we keep it to an exclusive audience. But then we miss our numbers again and again. The discounts get a little bigger, last a little bit longer, and go a little bit wider. And then, stage 3. We look up years later and see that acquisition costs are multiples higher than they used to be. A smaller and smaller portion of our revenue is coming from owned and organic sources. And it seems the only way to grow is through a stronger offer. Growth stagnates and margin erodes. This is the performance plateau. And this is when we almost went out of business. It's also when we realized we needed to build and invest in brand. After trial and a bunch of error, we rebuilt the company. And we were able to get back to growth. But this time, it was profitable, getting more so over time. But let's be real. If you're anything like me in the early days of Chubbies, you probably think brand is bullshit. The idea of spending any dollars on ads that don't drive purchase conversions seems like the stupidest thing a performance marketer could do. But what I learned is that I had an incorrect understanding of what brand actually is. So what is it? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not logos, fonts, color schemes. It's not some pretty brand book that no one looks at. It's not disconnected from performance marketing. And it's not exclusively for the big brands doing Super Bowl ads. And it sure as hell isn't unaccountable, at least if it's done right. What I learned is that brand is your moat against competitors trying to steal your customers. It's pricing power. It's future incremental growth. It's the driver of long-term equity value. And ultimately, it's the reason people buy from you without you having to constantly compete on the level of price and features. So sweet, sign me up. But still, when I understood what a strong brand actually meant, investing in it still wasn't an option. I mean, We weren't swimming in pools of cash we could waste. But more importantly, we had goals, and we couldn't deal with a short-term drop in revenue or MER. So, while we started to invest in brand, like especially, right, if we had no idea if this mythical thing called brand would even pay off, if ever. But what we learned is that we're continuing to see with our current Marathon Engine customers that this trough of despair, as I call it, doesn't happen. And here's an example from a premium denim brand we work with, where not only did they not see any drop in revenue, but new customer revenue accelerated, while both contribution margin and contribution dollars completely reversed trend. Sweet, so that's cool. So what about these long-term compounding returns that allegedly materialize at some undefined time in the future? Well, what we saw ourselves and what we continue to see across our Marathon Engine customers is that the return, strictly from running brand creative in brand-building campaigns and objectives, is meaningful, measured with long-term geo-holdout incrementality experiments. And the lift isn't only on our DTC sites. The lift halos everywhere your customers shop. Now, the lawyers won't let me say their exact names, but let's just say it halos to that website with the same name as the Long River and the shop that sounds like a clock. And to the greatest degree from our tests, brick and mortar retail shelves. So, with all this being said, 2 questions remain. What are the exact tactics, and how do I measure it? So to discuss these and other hard-hitting questions relating to all things brand, let's get Edlin and our friend Noel from Samsung out to the stage for some Q&A.
And so we are excited to welcome Noel, who is the head of media performance at Samsung Electronics USA. Thanks for joining us, Noel. I wanted to actually ask you a question, because we've talked a little bit about culture and how that is incredibly important. And I want to hear how you think about culture, and how does that move the needle downstream?
Right. I think that's a really, really important question. You know, I personally believe and professionally believe that culture is one of the most powerful way for our technology to feel human. And so at Samsung, we always talk about our technology, our innovation, how we improve quality of life. And we do believe that we can only get that message across when we're part of authentic partnerships within culture-driven moments. And so there's a reason why we partner with Unrivaled, or we have been official sponsors of the Olympics, or NCAA March Madness. It's because we know that within the sports culture, we have a lot of audiences who really love using their technology, their phone devices, to take memorable moments within their phones. And so culture is a way, together with creators and influencers, to get the story across, to be more authentic. Because we know that not everybody has a role to play in culture. Not every brand has to be part of the conversation. But if it's very authentic, and if people are talking about how they are using us in daily life, the movement downstream, to answer your question, audiences become warmer. They are much more engaged. And so the results for us is that they're spending more time on our channels. They're actually reading through our product description. They are taking advantage of our promos. And so you are driving them down to a more consideration stage, and the timing is less for them to convert. So I think that's all driven by a full funnel, really strong brand building culture initiative that drives people down the funnel.
It makes it almost easier for them to slide
That's
through.
right.
Right. Preston, you're nodding. Would you agree? Talk about how that worked for you.
Wholeheartedly, yes. So I think there were a couple of things on that front to echo. One, I think one of the things that we learned was the importance of clarity when we go about the process of engaging in culture or being relevant. And I think what I mean by that is clarity of who we are as a brand, right? When we think about the compounding or the amplification that can come from a creator or just from content in general, I think one of the things we learned was if a creator is working with us or with any of the brands that we worked with, and the brand message of who we are, maybe more importantly, who we are not, right, because it's a very clarifying thing, the sort of like diffuse component limits the positive impact. So from the brand side, it's just, let's get clear. The other big thing that, and maybe this is coming more from a smaller challenger brand perspective, is, I mean, I would love to sponsor the Olympics. That would be the coolest. But one of the things we learned is in order to engage in the brand context, in culture, it doesn't necessarily cost $250,000 to go out and film a video. We can use content we already have. Look at our organic content, just stuff that we've made where the job to be done is get noticed, get remembered. And so oftentimes we can freak out, like, oh my gosh, I only have a direct response workflow, I've got it all figured out, but no, I can't go to name your person to create this brand content. But I think one of the things we learned and one of the things we generally recommend to our customers is just take a hard look at the content you've already made, you've put out on your organic socials over the last 10 years. You've got some stuff, trust me.
I would love to dig into that a little bit more. So Noelle, talk us what that loop looks like at Samsung. So you talked about how you're making sure that that converts and what happens downstream. Can you talk a little bit more about how you know that it's working?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm more passionate about is that making sure that marketing organizations are moving away from treating branding and performance marketing in separate conversations. It's really just one single conversation because your audiences are seeing you in just one experience. And so in order to get them through the loop, you have to have a strong start off, which is your branding. And so they see you, they become more familiar, there's more attention, and you create that future demand in order for them to move to the next stage and drive them lower into performance marketing. And then I think what is great about how the business has evolved is that measurement and technology has really advanced us to look at the data and performance to help us enhance and improve our brand, back to branding, to see what are the next steps or strategies for us to look into. So for us at Samsung, it's really, as you had said, we have to look at it from upper funnel branding all the way down to conversion. But then data is also key in order for us to understand what is the next big step or what to optimize and what to enhance.
So what I'm hearing you say is you can use some of that data to help adjust what you do next. And so you have the ability to
Right. No. I mean, I know people talk about we have to be data-driven all the time. With that, I think we also have to be insights-driven, right? And so with the right data and the right insights, that's how you actually move and improve strategy.
And it's really remarkable for a large organization like you to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we try to move fast, and sometimes technology is a lot faster than we can think and we can process. Great thing with AI is that it's available, but I think at the end of the day, it's your brand and your product more than all of these new technology and inputs. It's so how do you humanize that information back to your consumers without sounding like a campaign?
Absolutely. Preston, again, nodding. I know you work with a lot of other brands. How do they handle that loop?
The measurement loop?
Yeah.
Yeah. So historically, from a brand perspective, as I think everyone in this room can attest, it's been somewhat difficult to think about measuring the return on brand, right? And that's because we have this whole ecosystem set up to support not that, right? So we also, we're performance marketers, right? We're all like the smartest people who have ever existed, right? We love numbers, we love math, right? So how do we then, traditionally people look at brand and they're like, okay, we've got these survey results, right? And you're like, okay, but still the so what remains, right? It's like, okay, you were mentioning unaided. Unaided went from here to here. Okay, but like, what did I do to drive that? And how much more money did I make because of that move? So those are the things that when we were operating, we were like, I don't know what to do with this readout. So what we've been trying to do, and what we started to do at Chubbies and have been working on for a bit at Marathon Data, is like, how do we make those connections so that we as performance marketers can take action, get a result immediately, but then still be able to predict and project out that incremental growth, right? Because at the end of the day, the only reason we do brand in the first place is to make more money, right? More profit dollars, right? Because it's not a vibes contest, right? You don't win anything for that. So, but you don't need Marathon Data, obviously. Like, what we're trying to do, and I think one of the things that we've seen over the years ourselves, as we've reframed things and then across our customers, is the trigger word of funnel. It's a real thing, right? And I used to think funnel was stupid, right? It's so stupid, but I'm trying to get purchase. But like, it's a real thing because, but it's a direct response funnel. So like, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is drive a behavioral funnel. People are taking actions at every step, and it's on us as performance marketers, right? Because at the end of the day, like, the reason we do this is for better performance. So we need to be very rigorous about what are we looking at here, what are we measuring here. Ideally, it's an action, not a passive thing, right? So we can engage people all the way up here at the top, right? The first interaction with our brand, right? I'd love for them to take an action of some sort, right? Searches, right? At the end of the day, if someone's taking time out of their busy life, thinking about your brand and searching for your brand or some product that you make that only you are known for, that's a huge deal. And I think one of the things that maybe gets a little poo-pooed is like, searches aren't necessary. Like, searches are very connected to business results, and there's a lot of research that proves that out. I would look up Les Binet. He's awesome. Look him up. He's the GOAT. But if you grow your share of search, good things happen. And I think one of the things we always think about is like, if there's a brand that's 10 times bigger than us, they generally have 10 times more people searching for them. So there are just some of these things that we can look at where it's kind of like inarguable as you construct this funnel. Yeah, you can go into the CFO's office and just say, look what I'm constructing. And oftentimes, when we're running sort of like endless DR, we might lose track of the fact that on a marginal basis, the least efficient dollars we're spending on a unit economic basis aren't really that profitable. So as we have that conversation too, there's some things that we can do where you don't, as I was mentioning before, see that scary drop that I think holds so much of us in this room back from actually doing the brand thing.
I think that's really interesting because, whether you're a big brand or you're a small brand, and I can relate to everyone in this room, is that we all go through the same challenges. We want to look at branding and conversion and drive cell phones for me, handheld devices. And I'm coming from being a challenger brand. And so it's really hard to get people to convert. And so when we go into executive leadership room to talk about full funnel, we need to be able to contextualize and measure branding the same way we are able to measure performance marketing. Once that becomes clear, it's no longer a conversation of having a leap of faith in order for us to do this. It becomes more of a sustainable growth conversation.
Absolutely. If people don't think of you, you can't convert them. I want to hear a little bit more, Preston, about the numbers or the tactics that kind of freaked you out when you started doing brand as a performance marketer, because that tends to be a challenge for a lot of people where they start to see, oh my gosh, this number's creeping up. How did you push through that?
I think one thing, just to say it, is like, you can waste a lot of money doing brand stuff, but in the same way you can waste a lot of money doing sloppy DR, right? So, just say that. It all requires analytical rigor, discipline, being methodical, et cetera, et cetera. But so when we went about it, one of the first ways that we went about it was we thought we would become meme lords and get endless organic views on organic socials as our way to drive top of funnel. And I think the takeaway for this audience is like, feel free to try it, but I would not, because the problem with that is that you get noticed, you get remembered, but there's no connection between those things and you as a brand. So I think that's where, if we don't sort of like make that connection, that's where you can get to a place where you're like, oh, my views or my reach or whatever are going up, but there's really no connection to business, because at the end of the day, right, what we're trying to do is be the automatic thing that comes to mind when someone goes from the 95, as you mentioned, to the 5. And so you have to do the noticing, the remembering, but that connection is required. So I think that's one of the things that freaked me out early on.
Fantastic. I have a last question for both of you. So everyone in this room is going to go back to their desk on Friday. What's the one thing that they should do differently? Noelle, you want to start?
I think for me, if there's one thing that I would like you to walk away from this great summit is, how can we stop talking about branding and performance as separate conversations? The investment should really be for both. And I do think that the brands who are winning when it comes to this are the ones who are able to bring in culture, creators, performance, all in one, ecosystem, and not looking at it in silo. And that's how they win. And so for me, it would be challenging and pushing everyone to be able to have that conversation with the right folks, internal or external, to look at your approach and your strategy the same way that you know it to be correct. You know what is right. And so how do you get to prove that? And obviously measurement would be key. But I would push for making sure that you don't look at it separately.
Preston?
I know you asked for one thing. I have 3 things. I'll be very quick. Number 1, it would be understand the marginal return of your least efficient dollars. Understand what those dollars are doing for you, because those dollars could potentially go elsewhere and you wouldn't see any drop in short-term revenue. 2, look at the creative that you're putting out into the world. What is that content? Do you feel good about it, right? Are you going to be pumped to see your friends, and your friends are going to see that piece of content and they'll be like, that's awesome? Or they're going to be like, oh, you're trying to sell me something. Not that it's bad to do that, but we want a healthy mix, right? And then the third thing is go construct your behavioral funnel. Like, what are the actions that I'm going to drive across my funnel to turn this whole thing into something that is subjective and soft to real hard numbers that you can use and do math against.
Preston, Noelle, I think we could keep talking, but we have run out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miranda's performing.
Thank you.